Up first tonight, we're going to have Willy Palomo. And I've gotten to know Willy over the last year and a half, 2 years or so through my work with the Humanities Council, and he has been a huge ally for us, taking care of the poetry slams that happen at the Utah Humanities Book Festival every year, as well as teaching in our venture program. He's an amazing poet, amazing teacher, just an all-around good guy, so we're really pleased to have him here tonight. Willy Palomo is an emerging writer and student at Westminster College. His poetry and prose has been published in the University of New Mexico's Scribendi, as well as in Ellipsis. He founded both the Voice Boxers Poetry Slam and the Westminster Slam Poetry to promote and nourish the local poetry community. Both slams have since sent poetry teams out to compete nationally. Palomo also coaches high school students through Poetry Out Loud and teaches a literature course once a week with Dr. Desilets at East High School. Please welcome Willy Palomo.
Andre's the motherfucking champ. I have no idea what that means, but I know it sounds cool. Andre's got a blue scooter and can do tricks off the sidewalk. Sometimes, when no one else is around, he lets me ride it down the block before he tells me to go get my own. He says he'll give it to me when he gets tired, but Andre never gets tired. Andre's always got the coolest new toys. Andre's got X-Men, water guns, and boomerangs. Andre's like a motherfucking boomerang. He ain't afraid to climb on a roof. He bizzes back and forth, and he always comes back. Andre once ran away from home, and the cops had to chase him on the subway. That's okay, though, because when he came back, his mom got him a brand new computer. Now he tells us about all the cool people he talks to. Andre learned his trick, right? Where he smashes Smarties on his desk and snorts them up his nose. Andre ain't afraid to curse out the kid who spits in my lunch at school. My mom forgot to pack my lunchbox for me. Andre shared his tacos, and Andre can roll the mean taco. When my vision went bad and I had to squint to see the chalkboard, Andre let me borrow his glasses. Andre didn't call me a bitch when I cried in gym class. Andre even got all the girls to stop picking on me. But Andre will never get to sleep over. And that's mostly because my dad's afraid if he sleeps over, we'll end up doing weird things in the dark, and he's really afraid I'm gonna turn out gay. But if Andre is gay, then being gay must be like the coolest thing in the world. Sometimes, Andre gets angry, and he chases me around the backyard with a butter knife. He usually says I'm sorry, though. He steals me a bag of potato chips to make up for it. Andre once stole a copy of Playboy, and we didn't get in trouble, even when his mama caught us. Andre's mom is so cool. Sometimes she sits outside on the stoop and waits for guys to come by and take her inside. On those days, Andre has to play outside. He always takes out his blue scooter and rides on the block. I throw him a peace sign, but Andre don't give a shit about peace. Andre don't give a shit about nobody. So, my name's Willy Palomo, as Michael said, and I don't do podiums because I feel like they're a wall between like you and your audience. In order to understand kind of the context I'm coming from, I fell in love with literature to hip hop. So my brother was a DJ, so all throughout my childhood I was listening to like Nas, Jay-Z, DJ Premier, Gangstar, a lot of East Coast hip hop that my brother just kind of kept feeding to me. My brother's first album was Stillmatic by Nas, with a great song there called One Mic. You can look it up afterwards. It's a classic hip hop song. And that's what kind of made me fall in love with like language and reading and writing. And then the other angle I'm kind of coming from is honors classes and like AP and like a really academic kind of background, which is a really weird kind of mixture to have in your head, to have like T.S. Eliot on one side and Jay-Z on the other side, like, hey, you should do this, hey, you should do this. So that's kind of influenced kind of the angle where I'm coming from. In high school, I ended up finding Poetry Slam at Mestizo's Coffee House when I saw Deanne Emmett and Cody Winger perform. So I really owe a lot to the slam community here for like kind of fostering me and helping to grow my voice. And we do a lot of poetry slams that we're going to tell you about kind of as the night goes on. The next piece I have is going to tone it down a little bit, and it's called Nonsense. My mama's hands are rougher than my father's. You don't get hands like these by greasing cars or axing wood. My mama scours toilet bowls until you can see your face reflected in the porcelain as you piss. Her hands smelling only of rubber and bleach, mopping and polishing all 3 stories of her boss's houses. Laundry, cooking, gardening, vacuuming, babysitting. My mama raised more than her own children. Little Joseph prefers Miss Maria to his own mother. Children know who cared for them. I still remember my own childhood. Sleeping on couches when I was young. My mom would come home from work so late I would only get to see her briefly in the mornings. Missing my mama, I resolved to wait for her. I would take out all my toys, mis libros, mi hombre araña, my Godzilla, sleeping with monsters in an attempt to stay awake long enough to see her come home from work. It is 12:04 a.m., and she is still not here. I cannot breathe and keep my eyes open at the same time. I know I only need to stay awake another half hour to see her. But inside, I know I'll never make it. My body can't move anymore. Even my love for my mama can't shake sleep's tear-soft touch. I'm falling into a couch that feels nothing like mom. One night, I dreamt I had made it. I heard the door crack open like a promise, the light turning on like a whisper, lifting my tired limbs from the sofa. As she laid me down to sleep, I thought I saw her smiling, her face damp with sweat or tears, her hands stroking the left side of my face, like the tough side of a sponge, rough. So, another place I do poetry is with the Westminster Slam Poetry, and there's a person from there, here, Courtney. I promised to embarrass her, and we're actually going to be competing in Colorado next week, which is super dandy and fun. We're going to be competing nationally in a bunch of other college slam scenes. And both the University of Utah and Westminster College have really strong poetry slam scenes that are starting to build and grow. So if you're around Westminster or you connect with us after your reading, and then we'll have plenty of places to tell you where you can go to experience more poetry. The next few pieces I'm going to do are the poems I am planning to perform next week for scoreboards and for audiences. And how many of you know about Poetry Slam? Okay, so slam poetry was started in the 1980s by a construction worker named Mark Smith. So what? People who knew about Poetry Slam say so what. So the thing about Poetry Slam is that it was started in the 1980s, and basically what Mark Smith, he was a construction worker, and what all of his friends were noticing is they'd go to do their poetry readings, and then they'd read for an audience, and the audience would be really bored or tired or falling asleep. So they were trying to think of ways to get the audience engaged so that they can be excited and be happy to be there. So they gave the audience scoreboards, and they're like, because they used to do it at a bar too, so they'd get heckles on top of having people fall asleep on them. So they're like, oh, you want to heckle me? I'll give you a scoreboard, and you can do it through a number. Which kind of is just a fun way of tricking people into liking poetry, is by making it a competition. So that's what we do in Poetry Slam, we trick people. So this next piece is a persona piece, which means I'm doing it from a voice which is not my own. This one's a little bit tougher sometimes upon first listen, but the first line is the title, which is kind of important to know when listening to this piece. Prayer from a hole in the wall. Oh, Big Bang of my body, I still feel your sweet fist inside me, the pop of plaster and tense tremble of knuckles that broke me into existence. My sisters stare star-like out of bedroom walls, brothers mumbling illegible braille, we are eyes that can never blink or sleep, mouths that never cry or speak, spitting out flaky teeth we bite into your silence like a peach. Sometimes we catch you listening, as we suck mouthfuls of cold air and blow pipes in the night with hymns of rust and brass. I still don't know whether this is how we worship the fifths that birthed us, or how we try to forget the miracle of our conception. I cannot imagine what fury must arouse you to constellate your living room like a burnt-out night sky, but spite must have sparked your spirit into a fit. But I know that when hands hold on to nothingness tight enough, they can't help but curl into fists to hurl their desire on any kissable surface and make a due to every consequence. Your longing becomes a weapon you cannot contain. Since my creation was an act of violence, I'll always be a hole in the wall, a reminder of hands designed to close and twist. My body is an emptiness you cannot heal without silencing part of the story, without destroying me. Oh, bony creator of my tongueless mouth, oh, Saturday evening blackouts drunk on thunder and rain, all I can do is wait for this whole house to collapse, to rip me at once into the greater void, to finally breathe me in as air, forgotten inside of a hotter body. I'll always be tempted to try and forget the Father who gave me life in the palm of his hand, who raised me to look so much like the mouth of a bottle, whose naked and drunk body slid off the couch as I failed to lift him up with my boy arms. Papi, I cannot forget who I am. Whole, a black-eyed truth, a past still wet with bruises. All I have left to do is wait and calcify your name like scars into the wall, always testifying of your omnipotence or complete lack of control, never letting you forget what you've done. I got what? I changed the ending on that. It's a little bit tricky. So this next poem, from a favorite you guys all probably love. So imagine there is no heaven. It's easy if you try. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Now imagine yourself as Yoko Ono. Imagine a punch that collapses your chest like an ashtray of chronic, vocal cords scratched over vinyl records, hair twisted like broken strings as you weep louder than guitars. Imagine every #1 hit as you press your bruises, blue and heavy as veins trembling through your body like a bass amp. Imagine keeping your face in a jar by the door and staring like a picture out of the frame. This is the face you must wear every time you are told to just lie there and think of England. Imagine England, imagine billboards, imagine band practices, every radio station playing lost signals. Imagine always being interpreted as the problem and not the victim. Doesn't that make it easier? Imagine there is no heaven, no hell like this one. How is anyone supposed to save you from a man that's bigger than Jesus? No one wants to imagine the size of their idol's fist. No one remembers it is the same size as their heart. When John Lennon leashed Yoko under his obsessive control, did he redefine love or redefine a heartbeat? I guess it's only called assault when it happens to Rihanna. I get it. It's so much easier to hate a black teenager than a white pop star. The difference between black and white assaulters is that Eminem can still write a love song with Rihanna that brags of over 500 million viewers on YouTube. Chris Brown deserves the hate he's got, but he's not the only one. The difference between black and white assaulters is the difference between a murder sentence and standing your ground. The difference between destroying your legacy and remaining invisible to the eyes of justice. I get it. This fame, this cash, this money all make abuse look so sexy. For Eminem, for Led Zeppelin, for John Lennon, abuse is sexy. A black eye is like a slipped tit. It sells faster than sex. Millions of viewers still replay hits so blinded by spotlights. The screams of the fans are the only ones they can hear. So once upon a time, people typically do that in poetry slam. This has been like a really quiet performance, which is okay because it's city art and we do that. We're really respectful of city art. But yeah, most poetry slams you go to, we'll be hooping, hollering, yelling, booing if we disagree with something people say, which is a powerful thing. Just to be able to have kind of that energy and audience engagement in the room. But I definitely feel a spirit here, so I'm not calling y'all boring or anything. Y'all are really attentive and I really appreciate it. So my work didn't used to be so political at all. I spent a lot of time the last few years having like a lot of really overwritten pieces that were really pretty and that did really well. But yeah, that were really pretty and kind of yes, emotional. And what ended up happening is that I ended up going to CUPSI last year, which is the College Poetry Slam, and I came in contact with so many beautiful, yes, like brown and black poets who were like college students, strong leaders in their community that had a lot of important things to say. And it was a very painful process, just living in Utah and like going to high school and going to college and always feeling isolated, especially in literature courses, where most of the people I would be reading would be dead and like always white. I got introduced to like Nora Zale Hurston, Langston Hughes, and I'm pretty sure that's where it was sent, which is pretty dismal. So being able to like meet other brown and black poets and just like sharing that camaraderie, and also the cool thing is that like while they're at CUPSI, they're like calling stuff out. If somebody did something messed up, whether it was sexist or racist or anything, they would call it out, and just being around that energy was so empowering, and it was painful to kind of realize like, oh, I could have been doing that all the time. Like I didn't just need to like shut up and put up with it, which has kind of had a huge kind of effect on how I approach schooling and how I approach poetry. So the last bits have been, the last 2 years of my work have been like a matter of like recreating and reconstructing my identity, and exploring themes I wasn't allowed to explore initially in creative writing classes, just because people would be like, oh, we don't get what you're saying. That comes from like a cultural background. That's different than ours. Whoa. So this next piece is a result of that. And it's from the perspective, it's another persona poem. It's from the perspective of an Aztec god named Quetzalcoatl. After Cortez conquered the Aztecs, he told the world that Montezuma received him as a god, as if my emperor would mistake his flimsy jacket for a warrior's feathers, as if my priest would mistake the bullets in his eyes as benevolence. Believing what Cortez tells you about La Conquista is like believing what George Bush tells you about Iraq. Catholic priests describe the indigenous as if they were dying to be baptized, when in reality, they had thrown themselves overboard, choosing to drown in an ocean of holy water rather than become chattel to the Spanish. I watched my people become a human sacrifice to the god of Mammon. Catholic priests trying to save the indigenous justify their assimilation by making my people look as Christian as a sacrificial lamb. They had to make us look like we were asking for it. Teaching La Conquista using only Spanish accounts is like learning women's history through the perspective of rapists. They painted me, Quetzalcoatl, an Aztec god, whiter than their lives, my skin paled like the blisters of smallpox. They tried to make me a feathered serpent into a dumb lamb of a deity, traded my feathers for wool, my hiss for a bleat, fearful of the venom in my fangs. They have to make the history of your culture into a myth in order to make you believe you don't belong. They will tell you stories about how I covered my eyes and cowered at death, but I never taught my people how to retreat. Christianity is what taught you how to turn the other cheek, submission to your conquerors. Christianity will tell tell you that in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was the God that created all things. But I made my people out of my yeast and my own blood so that when they take away your language, you can still find yourself inside the ashes of your tortillas. You may no longer speak Nahuatl, but my blood still runs through your veins, lava fresh through every wound. Your body is made out of the best parts of this earth. I hear your heartbeat as a prayer. They will show you the skins we have shed and say they have conquered us. But we have only slithered closer to the earth. It is impossible to tame a snake. You can only hope we don't overpower you with our embrace, that you don't mistake it for admiration when we kiss you with all of our teeth. So that poem's really me to Christianity, and I was totally raised Mormon, which has been something that was really kind of enriching for me and that has helped me out a lot, and that I usually like to clarify for people. I owe a lot to my background, even though it ended up messing me up on certain things. So I'm gonna do this next poem kind of as a counterbalance. Oh, and I totally brought copies of Ellipsis for people to grab if they wanted it. The next poem is in here. I won a student contest last year, so they published it in Ellipsis. Y'all can take those for free if you want them afterwards. Those only have one of my poems, but the rest of the poetry and prose in it is super good. I was a poetry editor for that one, so I feel really close to a lot of the pieces there. But yeah, this poem's just a good counterbalance. The beginning part that I sing says that we are little Indians, sons of Cuscatlan. Cuscatlan is El Salvador before it was Christianized. In the older draft of Quetzalcoatl, I had a line, because that kind of describes what I'm going to explain to you guys right now. Quetzalcoatl is an Aztec god, really important one. What the Mayans and a lot of the Pipilis, the people, the indigenous group that lived in El Salvador, called Quetzalcoatl was Cucuclan, which a version of that is Cuscatlan. So Cuscatlan is literally named after Quetzalcoatl, which is just kind of an interesting connection between both those poems. But Quetzalcoatl has nothing to do with the next poem than that. Unos inditos somos, hijos de Cuscatlan. My mother says she used to sing this lullaby for me when I was fussy and upset as a baby. I've never heard it elsewhere in my life, and I can no longer remember the words, but sometimes, when I can't sleep at night, I hum this line under my tongue. My mother was never good at singing. Her voice breaks sharp on almost every note, wavering, bold, and uncertain, always full of a sweet vulnerability lost inside her mouth. For years, I watched her hum hymnos at sacrament meetings, her illiterate eyes darting over the text, stuttering, struggling to read and sing at the same time. It always felt like the pianist was the one interrupting her. The piano was the one that didn't understand what a prayer should sound like. My mother holds La Biblia the way you hold a truth you cannot express, mouthing out words like hijo and Dios. She can barely pronounce them, but she knows what they mean. Some nights, those words quake from inside her. A red-eyed truth, a raspberry bruise. I hear it whenever she prays at night, especially when it's for me. Thank you. It's like 7:38. That will be my last poem then. Thank you guys for being so attentive and listening. Westminster Slam Team is fundraising to go to Cupsy. So if you want us to write poems for you, you can throw us $1 and we'll write a poem for you. Courtney is also a phenomenal poet, and we have 2 other really phenomenal poets on the team. And feel free to grab one of these after we bring up RJ, and then you're coming up to bring up RJ then. So thank you so much.